The fluorescent bulbs hummed overhead like tired voices refusing to rest. It was the kind of restaurant that didn't play music. Only silverware clinks, dishwater swirls, and the buzz of old neon signs bleeding through the windows. Behind the counter, Eli wiped the same part of the counter twice. Once to clean it, again because it gave his hands something to do. His apron was faded, his posture folded inward. A man made of quiet patience and aching feet. The tip jar sat near the register, wide open and painfully empty. Just a single peppermint someone had tossed in, maybe out of guilt. Eli watched a family leave behind crumbs and complaints. No tip, just a crumpled napkin with ketchup on it. A teenage couple walked out giggling, splitting fries and forgetting the man who refilled their sodas 3 times. Rush hour had come and gone. The jar hadn't changed. In the corner booth, an old man dozed, head tilted back, lips slightly parted. Across from him, a child scribbled on the paper placemat, drawing dinosaurs in blue crayon. Eli moved like a ghost between tables, always close, never noticed. He approached table 12, wiped down the surface, tucked in the chairs, and exhaled through his nose. The ache in his back bloomed like clockwork. A soft whistle slipped through his teeth, a tune his wife used to hum before breakfast. And just as quickly, he caught himself. No one to hum it to anymore. Then, the door jingled. A woman entered, alone. Early 30s, dressed neat but tired. She scanned the diner quickly and asked the hostess, "Can I sit by the window?" Moments later, Eli watched her from the service counter. She held the menu still, too still, and blinked too fast. And then, she quietly began to cry. A single mother sits alone, quietly crying into her menu. The woman didn't sob. She didn't sniffle. She just let the tears fall like they'd been waiting for permission. Her hands were clasped too tightly in her lap, knuckles pale. Outside, the early evening light spilled across the sidewalk, painting gold over cracked pavement. But inside, she looked like she was somewhere far away, somewhere colder. Eli approached slowly, soft steps that wouldn't startle. "Water while you look over the menu?" His voice was gentle, the kind people rarely noticed. She nodded without lifting her eyes. Her voice came small. "Thank you." He placed the glass down and stepped back. Not far, just enough to give space but close enough to return. He didn't rush to another table. Didn't shout orders to the kitchen. Instead, he leaned against the counter and watched her fingertips tremble as she turned the page. A kid's crayon drawing still sat nearby. A blue dinosaur, half-finished. She noticed it, smiled faintly, and pushed it aside like a memory she couldn't afford. That's when Eli saw it, tucked just under the edge of her purse. A pale yellow envelope, overstuffed. The kind utility bills came in. The kind you only carried when you had no drawer at home left to hide them in. Her eyes darted to it, then to the prices on the menu. She didn't reach for her phone, didn't place an order. She just kept reading. And crying. Eli didn't hesitate. He walked over slowly, notepad in hand like it was any other table. She sat up straight quickly, wiping her eyes, embarrassed. "I'm so sorry," but he smiled gently. "Ma'am, your meal tonight is on us." He slipped the check from the table. Fast, smooth, final. Before she could say a word. He slides the bill off the table before she can panic. Eli stood behind the counter, flipping through the receipt book. His fingers paused at a blank stub. He tore it, wrote a simple entry. "House comped, table 12. He didn't ask permission. He didn't need to. The drawer beneath the register creaked as he slid it open. He pulled out his wallet, faded leather, held together at the corner by black tape. Inside were 3 crumpled bills. 20, 5, 1. He stared at them for a moment longer than he wanted to. That 20 was for groceries. The 5 was for bus fare tomorrow. The one was just always there. A lucky dollar he never spent. Tonight, the groceries would wait. Eli folded the 20 and slipped it into the register, face down. No fanfare, no martyrdom. From the kitchen window, the cook peered out. "You comping someone again?" he called. Eli didn't answer. He picked up a tray and filled it with something warm. Soup, grilled cheese, fries. No frills, just comfort. He placed the plate in front of her quietly. She looked up, startled. "I didn't order." He smiled, kind and steady. "We thought you might need something warm." Her mouth parted like she wanted to explain or protest, but she didn't. Instead, she whispered, "Thank you," like it was the first word she'd spoken all day that didn't hurt. Eli just nodded, then stepped back. No questions. No pressure. He turned his attention to a stain on the floor, pretending to care about it, but he felt it. That small warmth that grows in the ribs when kindness lands where it's needed most. Then something shifted in the room. Glanced to his left. At the corner, booth near the windows, a man sat alone. Not eating, not moving, just watching. A figure in the corner watches, unmoving. The man hadn't touched his coffee. Steam had long curled away, leaving behind a cold, dark surface that mirrored his stillness. Eli stole a glance again. The man sat straight but not stiff. His suit jacket hung loosely, collar open, no tie. Something about him didn't fit. Not out of place, but out of time. His eyes weren't judging, but they weren't empty either. Eli looked away first. A table needed refilling. Another asked for ketchup. He moved like he always did. Smooth, efficient, invisible. But every time he passed that corner booth, he could feel it. The man wasn't people-watching. He was listening with his eyes. By the time the check came due, the crying mother had left. Quietly, gratefully. Her soup half finished, but her face softer. Eli cleared her table without a word, folding the napkin carefully like it somehow mattered. When he turned to the corner booth again, it was empty. The man was gone. Eli hadn't seen him leave. No door chime, no shift of air, nothing. All that remained was the receipt, tucked under the edge of the untouched coffee cup. Next to it, a thick stack of folded cash, maybe $60, $70. Far more than the price of anything on the menu. Eli looked around once, confused, cautious. Then he picked up the paper. It wasn't just a receipt. It was a note, folded in quarters, ink faint but deliberate. He hesitated, his fingers brushing the crease. Something in his gut twisted. Not fear exactly, but the weight of being noticed. He unfolded the slip with care, and in quiet black ink, it read, "We needed this more than you know." Signed. "A husband watching." Waiter opens the receipt. There's a note written. Eli read the words again, slower this time. "We needed this more than you know." The cash still sat untouched beside the cup, weighed down by silence more than paper. He looked toward the window, as if the man might still be there. But the sidewalk was empty now. Just the long smear of dusk and the faded yellow glow of a street lamp buzzing to life. A husband watching. Eli's eyes shifted to the table where the woman had sat. The chair still leaned slightly back from where she'd stood. Her napkin was folded neatly beside the empty bowl, as if even in pain, she'd tried to leave the world a little tidier than she found it. He picked up the note again and turned it over. Nothing else. No name, no number. Just 7 words and a dash of humanity. A man notices things when he's invisible for a living. And Eli noticed now. The man hadn't come to eat. He came to see if the world still had softness. And Eli had unknowingly proven something. He let out a slow breath and folded the note, sharp and careful like he was pressing something sacred into memory. The register drawer creaked again. He slipped the man's money inside. All of it. He wasn't going to pocket it. Not tonight. Some gestures aren't about survival. They're about reminding yourself you still feel. Eli returned to wiping tables, but his rhythm had changed. Softer. The kind of softness that comes after being seen. And just before closing, when he untied his apron and folded it in half, he paused, reached into the chest pocket, and slipped the note inside. A reminder that sometimes the smallest kindness echoes back. Waiter places the note in his apron pocket, thoughtful. Rain whispered against the bus window as Eli leaned his head against the glass. He didn't fall asleep. Tired men like him didn't get that luxury. They just closed their eyes and listened to the world leak past them. The $20 lighter in his pocket didn't ache. Not as much as the silence did. The bus hissed to a stop. He stepped off onto cracked pavement, shoes squeaking slightly. A flickering streetlight buzzed above, casting pale light over a row of worn-down brownstones. The kind of place where dreams lived in boxes and drywall. Eli walked around the side of the last building, down a narrow path, to a metal door with chipped red paint and a busted lock he never bothered to fix. He pulled it open gently. The basement room smelled of damp cement and lemon cleaner. A single mattress rested on a wooden pallet. A space heater clicked rhythmically in the corner like a broken metronome. On the far wall, taped-up drawings fluttered gently in the draft. Crayons and glitter, stick figures and stars. A child's galaxy in a forgotten world. "Daddy?" came a sleepy voice. Eli turned, and there she was. Lena, no older than 8, hair a mess of curls, face lit by the warm glow of a lava lamp shaped like a rocket. He smiled softly. "Hey, Peanut, you still up?" She nodded and lifted her arms. "Cold?" He crossed the room in 3 steps, crouched, and wrapped her in a threadbare blanket. Her tiny body curled into him like muscle memory. "You smell like soup," she mumbled. He chuckled once, low and tired. "Good soup, I hope." Lena closed her eyes and began to hum a melody. Broken and off-key, but familiar. Mel. It was Mel's lullaby. His daughter hums a lullaby. Off-key but warm. Morning arrived without warning. No alarm clock, no sunrise through glass. Just the clatter of something metallic and the unmistakable scent of something wrong. Eli blinked awake. His back ached from the floor mattress. The space heater had gone cold. From the other side of the room came a soft curse, the kind only a kid could invent. "Lena?" he croaked, rubbing his eyes. "I got it. Stay in bed." That command usually meant don't come in here until the fire dies down. He pushed himself up anyway, stepping into the tiny kitchenette carved from concrete and hope. Lena stood on a plastic crate, wielding a spatula like a sword. The stove glowed, one burner hissing under a pan. Smoke curled from its edges. "You're not supposed to be near the stove without me." "I used mittens," she said proudly, holding up her winter gloves, fingers puffed like sausages. Eli almost laughed, but the seriousness in her eyes stopped him. "What are we making?" "Pancakes," she said, gesturing to something black and vaguely circular on a chipped plate. "They're chocolate-flavored. Did you use chocolate?" "No." He stared at her. She stared back, then they both broke. Laughter spilled into the air, warming the cold like sunlight through cracked blinds. "I wanted to surprise you," she said. "You always make breakfast." "Well," he said, cutting into the charcoal puck with a plastic fork. "This is the best tire I've ever tasted," she giggled, proud and bashful all at once. He sat beside her on the mattress, fake eating his pancake as if it were gold-plated. She leaned her head against his arm. Then softly, as if scared the words might break if spoken too loud, she whispered, "I know you're trying so hard." "Daddy?" she whispers. "I know you're trying so hard." "Daddy?" The restaurant felt different under fluorescent morning light. Sterile, sharp like the truth had less room to hide. Eli clocked in with a nod to Rosa, the morning hostess, and ducked into the back to grab his apron. He tied it quick, tucked in his shirt and reached into the chest pocket. The note was still there, folded perfectly, heavy with silence. He didn't take it out. He stepped into the dining room just as Greg appeared from the office. Mid-40s, tucked shirt. Hair that tried to look young but gave up halfway through the gel. "Hey, Eli," Greg said, too casual. That tone meant trouble. Eli paused. "Yeah?" Greg motioned toward the office with a jerk of his chin. "Let's chat." Inside, the blinds were drawn. The desk cluttered with invoices and leftover fries. The smell of microwaved coffee clung to the walls. Greg sat. Eli stood. Greg smiled, leaned back, and tapped the desktop twice. "So, the soup, the grilled cheese, the fries. Sound familiar?" Eli nodded slowly. She needed it. Greg's smile dropped. That's not the point. I paid for it myself. That's also not the point. Eli stayed quiet. Greg sighed and leaned forward. Look, I know you think you're doing the right thing, but this place doesn't run on good intentions. It runs on policy. If you want to play superhero, go do it on your own time. Eli clenched his jaw. Not in anger, in restraint. Greg grabbed a small pink slip from his drawer and held it up. This isn't a fire notice. It's a reminder. Eli nodded once. Got it? Greg tilted his head, tone cooling. You're a good worker, Eli. Don't make me regret keeping you. Then softly, like a blade being sheathed. One more mistake, and you're gone. Hero. One more mistake and you're gone, hero. By lunch, the diner had filled with noise again. Not warmth, but noise. The kind that came from too many heels on too much tile, silverware clatter, fake laughter, and the sharp tisk of impatience between breaths. Eli moved fast. His steps had rhythm. Order pad in his left hand, coffee pot in his right. Excuse me, came the shrill voice from table 3. He turned, offering his best, practiced smile. The woman was in her 50s, her earrings louder than her tone, a leather purse sitting in the booth like royalty. I asked for a wine glass. This, she held up her glass like it was diseased, is for tap water. Eli didn't flinch. I can bring a wine glass if you'd prefer. If I'd prefer? She scoffed. I said Pinot. You brought Cabernet. This isn't a high school prom. Actually, Eli said gently, we don't serve Pinot during weekday lunches, just the... Her eyebrows launched upward. Across the room, other guests began to notice. One man lowered his menu. A child stopped coloring. Eli's voice dropped, calm and measured. I'd be happy to swap it for tea or coffee on the house. The woman looked at him like he'd offered her mud in a champagne flute. I'll be speaking to your manager, she declared. He nodded. Of course. Would you like me to grab him now, or after you finish your meal? She blinked, caught between insult and decision. I'll wait, she snapped. He nodded once, turned away, heart pounding. Not from her, but from how close he'd come to slipping. As he reached for the coffee pot again, something shifted at the edge of his vision. Booth 7, occupied. Same jacket, same stillness, same unreadable eyes. The man from the corner had returned. Same mysterious man is seated again. Booth 7 hadn't been touched. Not a napkin moved, not a menu lifted. The man sat with his hands folded, thumbs tracing one another like a habit built in waiting rooms. His eyes weren't scanning. They were resting, and they were resting on Eli. Eli didn't approach at first, just poured coffee for table 4, smiled at a toddler drawing a purple shark, then finally walked over, notepad in hand. Back again? He asked softly. Neutral. The man nodded once. You remember me? You didn't order last time. Didn't need to, the man replied, voice low and even. Some things you just watch unfold. Eli paused, unsure whether this was praise or warning. I didn't catch your name, he offered politely. You didn't need to, the man repeated, then let the moment breathe. Eli's shoulders stiffened. Can I get you anything today? Coffee. Black. No need to ask again tomorrow. It was subtle, the implication. Eli scribbled it anyway. 1 black coffee. As he turned to leave, the man spoke again. You handled that woman well. Eli froze. The man tapped once on the table. Decent, that's the word. You're a decent man, Eli. His name? Eli turned slowly. Have we met before? No, the man said, a trace of a smile tugging at his mouth. But kindness has a way of making its own introductions. Eli looked down. The coffee pot warmed his fingers, but the chill in the air came from something else. Being known. The man reached into his coat, pulled something small and discreet. A card. He stood, smoothed his jacket, and walked past Eli with a single nod. And as he passed, he slipped the card into Eli's apron pocket, slips a business card into his pocket. The shift dragged on. Eli worked in practiced motions, Refill, scribble, clear, smile. But his fingers kept brushing against the edge of the card tucked deep in his apron. It sat like a pebble in his pocket. Not heavy, just impossible to ignore. By closing time, the buzz of plates had faded. The neon open sign flicked off with a tired sigh. Eli wiped the counter for the 5th time. Slower now. Not to clean, just to stall. He finally pulled it out. A smooth matte card. No logo, no title, just a single phone number, and beneath it, handwritten in small slanted ink, "Call me." That was it. No name, no company, no why, just, "Call me." He turned it over. Blank. The kind of blank that made your throat tighten. Eli glanced around the empty diner. Rosa had left. Greg's office light was off. The card felt out of place here. Too clean, too sharp. Like it didn't belong in a man's hands who still smelled like fryer grease. He rubbed a thumb over the number. Memorized it without meaning to. "You're a decent man, Eli." The compliment echoed in his head like a voice in a big, empty room. He didn't know why that man had come back, or how he'd known his name. But this card? It wasn't comfort. It was temptation. And Eli had learned long ago not to chase things that looked too easy. He walked to the register, paused, and opened the small trash bin below. With one quiet breath, he dropped the card inside. The lid snapped shut. Done. Waiter throws the card into the trash. The basement door groaned open, and Eli stepped inside, shoulders sinking with the weight of another day folded behind him. Lena sat cross-legged on the mattress, coloring in a spiral-bound notebook with a single red crayon. The lava lamp beside her burbled like it always did. Slow, quiet, soothing. "You're late," she said without looking up. "Dinner rush," he replied, kicking off his shoes. "But I brought you something." He reached into his coat and pulled out a jelly packet and 2 lollipops. Her eyes lit up like they'd just won the lottery. "This is better than groceries," she whispered. "Dramatic." Eli laughed under his breath and dropped the candy into her hands. He moved toward the sink to rinse his face, but paused. Her voice followed him like a thread. "Why'd you throw that away?" He turned. "What?" "That card. I saw you. You pulled it out, looked at it like it was made of fire, then threw it away." He blinked, surprised. "You watching me through the window now?" "Maybe." She smirked. "You forget how small I am. I fit in secrets." He shook his head, grabbing a towel. "It was nothing. Just a number. But it was the guy from the diner, right? The one who tipped a lot?" Eli didn't answer. She sat up straighter, suddenly serious. "Dad, what if it's not nothing? What if it's something good? Like a miracle? Like in the stories Mom used to read?" Eli froze. Lena's voice softened. "Maybe it's not something to be scared of just 'cause it's different." He looked at her, hair tangled, shirt inside out, eyes wiser than her age. She held his stare, then whispered, "What if it's a miracle?" She says, "What if it's a miracle?" The sink hissed with steam as Eli plunged another plate into the soapy water. His hands moved on autopilot. Scrape, rinse, stack, repeat. The fluorescent light above flickered with each slam of the back door, and his shadow jerked with it like a tired puppet. It was closing shift, which meant he was alone with the dishes. And the noise in his head. Forks clattered. Sauce dried into rust-red patches. His knuckles were raw from hot water. He liked it that way. Pain made the silence easier to carry. Behind him, the industrial fan whirred like a jet engine trying to take off but never lifting. Eli reached for another tray, only to feel his back tighten. Sharp, fast. He winced but didn't stop, didn't even straighten. He'd worked through worse. Soap suds rose to his elbows. His shirt was soaked down the middle. Every few seconds he wiped his brow on his sleeve and kept going. "You're a decent man, Eli." The words played again like a stubborn tune. The voice, the card, the number, the trash. He scrubbed harder, then slower, then stopped. Eli turned off the tap. The silence after the water drained felt louder than the sink. He reached behind the bin, pulled it forward, and dug under layers of receipts, paper towels, and a half-eaten grilled cheese. There it was, bent now, smudged at the edge. He pulled out the card. His heart beat once, heavy, again, hopeful. He dried his hands on his apron, reached into the office drawer and pulled out the landline. The buttons clicked beneath his fingertips. He dialed. One ring, then two. Then, click, a voice. "I've been waiting for your call." He dials the number. The line didn't crackle. No hold music. No robotic voice asking him to wait. Just a click. Then breath. "I've been waiting for your call," the man said, calm as ever. Eli stood in the back office, one hand bracing the desk, the other gripping the corded phone like it might bite. "How did you know I would?" "I didn't," the man replied. "But I hoped the kind of man who covers someone else's meal might also know when not to ignore a door that opens." Eli didn't answer right away. There were 1,000 ways this could go wrong. The number, the card, the silence between them. "What do you want from me?" he asked finally. "A conversation." "That's it?" "For now." Eli's eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" The man let a small pause hang in the air like steam. Someone who's seen enough pain to recognize a man still carrying his. "You don't owe me anything. But if you're willing, I'd like you to come to dinner." Eli almost laughed. "Dinner?" "Yes, not at the diner. Somewhere different." Eli shifted his weight. "Look, if this is some kind of pitch—" "No pitch. No strings." "Then why?" The voice on the other end softened, barely above a whisper. "Because there are moments when a small act of grace creates a ripple neither of us understands, until it crashes back into our lives." Eli looked toward the door. The register light blinked quietly in the dark. "Will there be food?" "Plenty. People. Just me. And someone I'd like you to meet." The line buzzed faintly. Then, "I'll text you the address. Tomorrow, 7 sharp." Before Eli could respond, the line clicked. "He's invited to a private dinner. No details." The taxi rolled to a slow stop at the end of a curved driveway. Eli stepped out, squinting up at the house. No, not a house. A mansion, the kind people point at during drives and say, "Can you imagine?" White stone walls, wide double doors, iron lanterns flickering with gold light like they were lit, for guests that never came. Eli adjusted. The collar of his only decent shirt, the one Lena had ironed with her tiny pink flat iron. His thrift store shoes squeaked on the polished steps. He felt like a scratch on a glass floor. He stood at the door for a beat too long. No bell. Just a brass knocker shaped like a lion's head. He raised his hand, hesitated, then knocked. Once, twice. The sound echoed. Deep, hollow, like it traveled through memories. He glanced at the windows. No curtains twitched. No shadows moved. He exhaled. This was a mistake. Whatever this was, it wasn't his world. He turned to go. Click. The door creaked open. Eli froze mid-step and turned back slowly. But it wasn't the man. A child peeked from behind the heavy wood. A girl, maybe 7 or 8. Her hair in soft waves, eyes wide but calm. She sat in a sleek black wheelchair, one hand resting on the wheel, the other gripping the inside of the door. "You're early," she said, matter-of-factly. Eli blinked. "Am I?" She shrugged. "Dad says early people are either polite or scared." He couldn't help the small smile. "Which one do I look like?" She tilted her head, studied him, then replied, "Both." She rolled back slowly and held the door wider. "Come in," she said softly. "We've been waiting." A child opens the door. The foyer swallowed Eli in soft light and polished silence. The floor gleamed like a lake of marble. Paintings he didn't recognize hung in gold frames. A curved staircase swept upward like a wave caught in still motion. The girl rolled ahead of him, wheels quiet against the stone. She didn't look back, just trusted he would follow. He did. They passed through an arch into a living room that looked more like a showroom. Untouched, undisturbed, expensive. A grand piano rested near the bay windows. Photos lined the shelves. A woman with warm eyes, a baby cradled in her arms. The same girl, now older, always seated, always smiling. "You like music?" she asked suddenly. Eli nodded. "Yeah, used to." She paused at the fireplace, glancing up at the dark mantel. "My mom played piano. A lot. I think she thought music could fix things." Eli stepped closer. "Did it?" The girl's lips curved gently. "Sometimes." She turned in her chair to face him, legs curled under a soft blanket. "My dad doesn't invite many people here. He says most don't see past the furniture." Eli smiled. "I'm not most people." She studied him, searching, not judging. "You looked sad at the diner," she said. He looked away. "I've seen that face before," she added. "Where?" She tilted her head toward the photos. "On my dad. After Mom died?" Silence filled the space between them like fog. Then came the soft shuffle of shoes. The man from the diner appeared in the doorway, suit jacket off, sleeves rolled. He didn't smile, just looked at his daughter, then at Eli. "She's alive today," he said quietly. "Because of kindness. A stranger's. And I don't believe in accidents." The dining room was long and too quiet, the kind of quiet where even the clink of a fork felt rude. Eli sat at one end of the polished oak table. The man, Daniel, sat across from him, closer to the girl, who now picked at her steamed vegetables without much interest. 3 plates, silver utensils, crystal glasses. No one spoke for a while. The food smelled perfect, but Eli barely tasted the roasted chicken in his mouth. His hands stayed in his lap more than on the table. Linen napkins still folded. "You're uncomfortable," Daniel said finally, not as a question. Eli gave a small dry chuckle. "Is it that obvious? You keep checking for a tip jar." The girl stifled a laugh, and Eli's mouth curved. "Almost." Daniel leaned forward, resting his forearms on the table. "I was there that night. When you paid for her meal. When you slid the bill off the table like you were trained not to make kindness visible." Eli shifted in his chair. "People need help sometimes. And most don't give it," Daniel said. "Not unless there's something to gain." "I didn't do it for anyone watching." "I know. That's why I watched." Silence again. Eli sipped from his glass. Water, not wine. His throat felt dry either way. Daniel glanced at his daughter, then back at Eli. His eyes held something heavy. Not pity, not judgment, just understanding. She almost didn't make it after her mother passed. "Shut down, stop talking." Wouldn't leave her bed. Eli looked at the girl, who now traced circles into the table with her spoon. "And then one night," Daniel continued, "we went to that diner, and she saw you." He paused. "I want to offer you something." Eli didn't speak at first. He let the sentence hang in the space between them like it needed to breathe. Daniel leaned back, not rushing. The only sound was the quiet clink of the girl's spoon against porcelain. Steady, rhythmic, like a heartbeat refusing to give up. "I'm not offering a handout," Daniel said calmly. "You've had enough of those in your life to know what they feel like." Eli's jaw tightened slightly. "I'm offering a job." Eli raised his eyebrows. "Doing what? Waiting tables in your kitchen?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Being a presence. For her. Someone she talks to. Laughs with. Someone who's real." Eli looked at the girl. She was pretending not to listen, but her eyes betrayed her. Watching. Hopeful. Familiar. "I'm not a therapist," he muttered. "You're better," Daniel replied. "You're a father." That word, Eli blinked slowly. "I already have a daughter," he said, quieter now. "She's everything." Daniel nodded. "I'm not asking you to trade one for another. I'm asking if you'd be willing to share what's already in you." Eli ran a hand down his face. "This doesn't make sense," he said. "You don't know me." "I know enough," Daniel replied. "Enough to trust you with what matters most to me." There was no business card this time, no suit and tie pitch. Just a man, stripped down to something human, holding out something delicate. "And yes," Daniel added, You'll be paid. Well, but that's not what matters. Eli looked at the girl again. She smiled, just barely. What does matter then? Daniel's voice dropped, almost reverent. You'll be paid. But you'll also be seen. The key rattled in the basement door. Eli stepped inside with a plastic grocery bag in one hand, a folded envelope in the other. His boots were cleaner than usual, shirt freshly pressed. A strange stillness clung to him, like a man walking through his own house with borrowed air. Lena sat on the mattress, flipping through one of her old coloring books. Not drawing, just flipping. She looked up. You're late again? Eli smiled. I brought orange juice, and those crackers with the peanut butter you like. She didn't smile back. He set the bag down, but the envelope stayed in his hand. She noticed. What's that? He sat beside her, slower than usual. A job offer, her eyebrows raised. Like, at another diner? He shook his head. It's different. Private. Doing what? Eli paused, searching for the right words. Spending time with someone. A little girl. Lena's eyes shifted. You mean the rich man's daughter? She asked. He nodded. Lena looked away. Are they paying you to be her dad? Eli's heart dropped a little. No, it's not like that. Feels like that. He tried to explain gently. She's hurting. Like we were. She just needs someone real. Someone who shows up. So do I. Her voice wasn't loud, but it hit harder than a shout. He reached for her hand, but she pulled it into her lap. Lena, what if they start to like you more than I do? She whispered. Eli's breath caught. That's not possible. You don't know that. A beat of silence. She looked at him, eyes wet but defiant. Don't lose who we are for who they are. Eli arrived just before 7. The mansion door opened before he knocked. The girl already waiting in the hallway like she'd timed it down to the minute. Right on schedule, she said, eyes sharp but warm. He followed her into the sunroom this time. It wasn't grand like the dining room or silent like the hall. It was lived in. Board games on the shelf, a blanket draped over the couch, a window cracked just enough to let in the hum of birdsong. So, Eli said, glancing around. What's on the schedule today, boss? She blinked. Boss? He grinned. You're the one running things. I'm just here to follow orders. A small smile tugged at her mouth. She wheeled closer to the shelf and pulled out a puzzle box with one hand. Think you can help me with this without losing any pieces? She asked. I've raised a child, he said, sitting on the carpet beside her. I've stepped on more puzzle pieces than most people step on gravel, she laughed, the sound light and sudden, like a window had opened inside her chest. They worked in quiet for a while. She placed the corners with care. He filled in the sky. Now and then she'd glance at him, curious, measuring, but not guarded. Eli didn't press. He just stayed steady, soft. An hour passed like 5 minutes. Then Daniel appeared at the door frame, silent, watching. He didn't interrupt, just leaned there, arms folded, expression unreadable. When Eli finally looked up, Daniel said softly, more to himself than anyone. She hasn't smiled like that since her mother died. The mansion's basement wasn't cold like Eli's. It was dry, quiet, and finished with polished wood floors and built-in shelves lined with photo albums and forgotten trophies. Daniel had asked him to help carry a box down, something about old files. The girl had followed without a word, her wheels gliding silently behind them. Eli set the box on a low table, wiped his hands on his jeans, and stood there for a moment, surrounded by the muffled stillness only basements know. Something about it tugged at memory. He exhaled, and before he could stop himself, he hummed just a few notes. Soft, gentle. A melody stitched into his bones. A lullaby. It was almost nothing. A breath? A ghost. Then a voice behind him. Was that a song? Eli turned. The girl sat in her chair, wide-eyed, head tilted like she was trying to catch the last fading echo of it in the air. It's nothing, he said quickly. Just a habit. An old one. You sing? Used to. A long time ago. She wheeled forward closer. That wasn't just a hum. That was real. Eli scratched the back of his neck. My wife used to sing. I picked it up from her. The girl looked down. Then back up. What was it called? He paused. Thought. Didn't have a name. Just hers. She was quiet for a beat. Her voice dropped to a whisper, almost like a prayer. Sing it again. Eli stared at her. Not with surprise, but with something older. Something sacred, and maybe, just for a second, he forgot he wasn't supposed to belong here. Sing it again, she whispers. The room had grown still. No air moved. Even the pipes seemed to hush as Eli sat on the edge of a cedar chest, hands clasped, staring down at his feet like they might walk him backwards through time. She used to sing in the mornings, he said softly. Before the coffee even brewed. The girl didn't speak, just listened, her chair angled toward him, the puzzle from earlier now abandoned. Her name was Melody. Fitting, right? He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. But everyone called her Mel. He leaned back, voice just above a whisper. She had this way of humming while brushing her teeth. Drove me crazy. Off-key and happy as hell. The girl smiled, but only a little. She'd sing to Lena, our daughter, even when she was too young to understand. Lullabies, church songs, whatever was playing in her heart that day. He paused, eyes flicking toward a far wall like it might hold a memory. Then one day she just stopped. A beat passed. Doctors called it sudden, he continued. We were saving up for her to record an EP. Nothing big. Just 5 songs in a studio that charged by the hour. His throat tightened. She died before we ever booked it. The girl didn't move. Eli's eyes glistened, but no tears fell. His voice cracked instead, where the emotion leaked out. I haven't sung since she died, he said, pressing his palms together like he was holding something delicate between them. She took the melody with her, and in that still, golden basement, silence played the rest of the song. I haven't sung since she died. Later that afternoon, while Eli helped clean out a storage cabinet near the music room, the girl rolled up beside him holding something long, wrapped in a faded quilt. She didn't say anything, just rested it gently across his lap like it was something sacred. He looked down. The shape was unmistakable. Curved wood, delicately covered, silent and waiting. He unwrapped it slowly. The quilt fell away to reveal a violin. The finish was dulled with time. One string hung loose, another completely snapped. The bridge was crooked, and a faint crack curved across the belly like a tired scar. She used to play it, the girl said softly. My mom, every night after dinner, even when she was sick. Eli ran his fingers along the neck. The varnish had rubbed away in the spots where fingers once danced. He could almost hear the notes trapped inside, too scared to come out anymore. I didn't know it was still here, Daniel's voice murmured from the doorway. The girl turned slightly. I found it last week. I hid it until I knew. Knew what? Eli asked gently. She met his eyes. That someone good would come along and know what to do with it. Eli blinked. I'm no musician. Not anymore. Yes, you are, she said simply. He held the instrument in both hands, weightless but heavy at the same time. It felt like holding a memory that didn't belong to him, but somehow did. She never played after Mom passed, Daniel added. And neither did I. We didn't want to hear her absence. The girl reached forward, her hand resting softly on the bridge. Then she whispered, Fix it. For both of us. The kitchen buzzed with low conversation and high-end appliances. Marble counters, stainless steel everything. Even the fridge had its own soft hum, like money didn't sleep here either. Eli stood at the sink rinsing a cutting board. The girl was in the garden with her tutor. Daniel was out on a call. For the first time since he'd arrived, Eli was alone with the staff. He didn't mean to listen, but it's hard not to hear when people stop whispering just enough to be heard. I'm just saying, one of the chefs muttered. He's not exactly what I expected when Mr. Dawson said personal companion. Yeah, another added. scraping butter into a bowl. "I thought it'd be a therapist, or at least someone polished." "Did you see his shoes?" A third voice cut in. They squeaked on the marble. "That's how you know." Low chuckles followed. "I mean, he sings, apparently," the second one continued. "And now she's smiling, so maybe poor magic is the new rich therapy." Eli kept rinsing, scrubbing slowly, carefully. They weren't shouting. They weren't cruel, but each word left a scratch somewhere inside him. Another voice, this one a bit softer. "Still, it's weird, right? Him just being here like he belongs." Someone agreed with a low hum. The bowl slipped in Eli's hand. He caught it before it hit the sink. Silence. Then footsteps shifted away. The fridge door opened. Ice clinked into a glass. Chatter resumed, about recipes this time, ingredients and prep. But the damage had landed. Eli dried his hands with a cloth that cost more than his coat, folded it twice. "Set it down." He didn't say a word. He just walked out. He hears it all, and stays silent. The kitchen buzzed with low conversation and high-end appliances. Marble counters, stainless steel everything. Even the fridge had its own soft hum, like money didn't sleep here either. Eli stood at the sink rinsing a cutting board. The girl was in the garden with her tutor. Daniel was out on a call. For the first time since he'd arrived, Eli was alone with the staff. He didn't mean to listen, but it's hard not to hear when people stop whispering just enough to be heard. "I'm just saying," one of the chefs muttered. "He's not exactly what I expected when Mr. Dawson said personal companion." "Yeah," another added, scraping butter into a bowl. "I thought it'd be a therapist, or at least someone polished." "Did you see his shoes?" A third voice cut in. They squeaked on the marble. "That's how you know." Low chuckles followed. "I mean, he sings, apparently," the second one continued. "And now she's smiling, so maybe poor magic is the new rich therapy." Eli kept rinsing, scrubbing slowly, carefully. They weren't shouting. They weren't cruel, but each word left a scratch somewhere inside him. Another voice, this one a bit softer. "Still, it's weird, right? Him just being here like he belongs." Someone agreed with a low hum. The bowl slipped in Eli's hand. He caught it before it hit the sink. Silence. Then footsteps shifted away. The fridge door opened. Ice clinked into a glass. Chatter resumed. About recipes this time, ingredients and prep. But the damage had landed. Eli dried his hands with a cloth that cost more than his coat, folded it twice, set it down. He didn't say a word. He just walked out. He hears it all and stays silent. The pool shimmered under fading light. Laughter echoed across the courtyard. Light, gentle, unfamiliar. Not from the girl, but from Eli. He lifted her from the water, wrapped her in a towel like he'd done 100 times for Lena. His arms moved with the same rhythm. Familiar, fatherly. But this time, Lena wasn't there. She stood at the edge of the stone fence just out of sight, peeking through the ivy-covered iron bars that wrapped around the property. Her hoodie was too thin for the breeze, her curls tucked messily under a knit beanie. She'd walked 3 blocks alone after school. No bus fare left, no note left behind. She just needed to see, and what she saw made her feet grow still. Eli laughing. Eli brushing the girl's hair from her eyes. Eli lifting the wheelchair into the sunroom like it was second nature. Not just helping, belonging. Lena pulled the sleeves over her hands and turned away. Her chest felt full and empty all at once, like trying to breathe in a dream underwater. Back home, the basement felt colder than usual. The heater was off. She opened the drawer beside her mattress, pulled out a marker, and tore the back off an old cereal box. She wrote only one thing. "Don't forget me." No name, no date, no heart doodle. She folded the cardboard in half and placed it on Eli's pillow, then curled under the blanket and stared at the ceiling, eyes wide open, letting the silence answer questions she didn't know how to ask. She leaves a note. "Don't forget me." Eli sat alone on the stone bench just outside the music room. The violin rested beside him, newly cleaned but still silent. The girl had gone inside for lunch. Daniel was upstairs on a call. For once, the house was still. In his hand was a folded piece of paper, the kind rich people used for contracts, elegant stock, clean font, subtle watermark. It was a full-time offer. Live-in, private salary, flexible hours, education support, medical coverage, no uniforms, no, yes sir, no sir. Just presence, just being there, just being seen. He read it again, slower this time, and then pulled a second paper from his jacket pocket. Cardboard, torn from a cereal box, crinkled at the edges. Written in black marker, messy but clear. Don't forget me. He stared at both notes, one in clean ink, the other in raw feeling, his breath caught in his chest. He could hear her laugh again. Not the girl in the mansion, but Lena, laughing in their basement when she built a fort from chairs and coats, laughing when he burned rice and tried to call it crispy style. She never asked for more than him, never complained when the heat went out, never cried when he brought home dinner in his pockets. And still, he was here, in a world where the air smelled like lemon oil and the light had no flicker, and part of him liked it. That terrified him more than he could admit. He folded the contract slowly, then whispered to the empty room, I already have a daughter, and she thinks I forgot her. The recital wasn't formal, just a small charity gathering in the Dawson Estate's side garden. A few folding chairs, catered tea, quiet chatter, and polished shoes. The girl had been preparing for a short speech about her physical therapy progress. But last minute she asked Eli for something different. Will you sing? She'd asked, clutching the repaired violin in her lap. Eli hesitated. I'm not. Yes, you are, she whispered. You sang it to her. Sing it for us. So now he stood, hands trembling slightly, a soft mic clipped to his shirt. A small breeze lifted the edge of the sheet music on the piano. Untouched. He didn't need it. Eli closed his eyes and began. The same song, Mel's song. But this time it had changed. It was gentler now, slower, no longer a lullaby for the past, but something rising, something becoming. The girl watched him from the front row, her chin trembling. Daniel stood near the back, arms crossed, but his eyes never left Eli. The staff listened, stunned, even the judgmental ones. And behind the hedge, Lena stood, hidden, watching, heartbreaking. She hadn't meant to come, but she'd followed the voices, the music. And when she saw him, really saw him standing on that makeshift stage like he belonged to someone else's world, something in her cracked. He sang like she didn't exist, like she'd been erased. She stepped forward, past the hedge, onto the grass, toward the stunned guests and the man who had once been hers entirely. And then, in front of everyone, voice sharp and shaking, She's not your real family. Eli froze mid-note, gasps, rippled. The air snapped, like a string pulled too tight. She's not your real family. The door shut behind them with a sharp click. Lie stood just inside the library. The shelves tall, the room too clean, too quiet. Daniel stood near the fireplace, his back to the room, one hand resting on the mantel. Neither of them spoke. Outside, the guests were still murmuring. Inside, the echo of Lena's voice hadn't left the walls. She's not your real family. It kept ringing. Daniel finally turned, slow and deliberate. His face was unreadable, not rage, but something colder. Do you have any idea what that did to her? Eli swallowed. She's a kid. She's scared. She thought, I'm not talking about your daughter, Daniel interrupted. I'm talking about mine. Eli blinked. She cried after you left, Daniel continued, voice tight. Tried to stand up, tried to follow you, fell, hard. That moment undid 3 months of progress. That wasn't her fault, Eli said, stepping forward. Don't punish her for… Daniel raised a hand. No one's being punished, but things have changed. The envelope was already on the table. Open, I'm withdrawing the offer. Silence. Eli looked at it. Then back at Daniel. I didn't do this to hurt anyone. Daniel's voice dropped. But you did hurt her. By making her feel like she didn't matter, the second someone else needed you more. Eli's throat tightened. I love my daughter, he said softly. I chose her. And I respected that, Daniel replied. But now I have to choose mine. He stepped closer, eyes steady but sad. I mistook you for someone safe. Those words stung more than shouting ever could. Eli looked down. The contract, the memories, the silence. He said nothing and walked out. I mistook you for someone safe. The bus ride home was longer than he remembered, or maybe time just moved slower when you had nothing to return to but silence. Eli stepped off the curb and walked the last block. No grocery bag in hand this time. No energy left to even check the mailbox. He unlocked the basement door. The hinges groaned. Inside, the air was still and damp, like it had been holding its breath while he was gone. The heater hadn't been turned on. The space was dim, and Lena wasn't there. He found her note still folded on his pillow. Don't forget me. He sat down on the mattress, holding the cardboard between his fingers like it might shatter. Around him, the room hadn't changed. Same wall of drawings, same cracked windows sealed with tape, same pair of shoes lined up neatly by her side of the mattress. But Eli had changed. He leaned back against the wall and exhaled slow, like grief was dripping out of him one breath at a time. And then he saw it. In the corner, the violin. Not in its case, just lying there. No bow, no polish, no pride. He crawled toward it slowly like it was something wounded. The bridge was cracked, one string missing, a new dent along the chin rest. It had been dropped, or thrown, or both. He picked it up gently, holding it like a child. For a long time he didn't move, just sat there in the shadows, holding the broken music, and everything it had come to mean. The basement was quiet, but inside him, something shattered. The violin lies broken again. The next morning, Eli clocked in at the diner like nothing had happened, like he hadn't sung in a garden, like he hadn't been fired from a world he never belonged in, like his daughter hadn't slipped through his fingers while he reached for someone else's brokenness. The kitchen was already clanging, the smell of grease heavy, familiar, too familiar. He tied his apron without looking at it, hands moving from memory. The fabric felt heavier than usual. He stepped out onto the floor. Rosa handed him a table assignment without meeting his eyes. Customers came and went. No one asked where he'd been. He refilled waters, took orders, smiled at old couples who wouldn't remember his name. But then he noticed it. The counter, the register, the space beside the napkin dispenser. The tip jar was gone. He paused. That empty jar, always half full of pennies, gum wrappers, or sympathy dollars, had become something steady, something his. He stepped behind the counter and searched the shelf below. Nothing. Greg walked by with a clipboard. Where's the jar? Eli asked quietly. Greg didn't stop walking. Corporate says it looked tacky. Eli stared at the empty counter. It felt colder, like no one expected kindness anymore, not even in spare change. He reached into his apron for a pen. But his fingers brushed something else. Paper. He pulled it out. Slow. Careful. The note. We needed this more than you know. A husband watching. He unfolded it again, as if reading it for the first time. The corners were worn now, the crease soft, and in a world where even the tip jar had vanished, Eli needed the reminder that once he mattered. His apron pocket still holds the old note. The bell above the diner door chimed. Eli didn't look up at first. It was lunchtime. The usual shuffle of delivery drivers and regulars who ordered coffee and sat for hours. But something about the silence that followed the bell caught his attention. No chatter, no shoes squeaking on tile, no orders being shouted. He looked up. There she was, the girl in the wheelchair. Not in designer clothes. Not with Daniel. No security. Just her. In a gray hoodie too big for her frame, her hair pulled into a low ponytail. She rolled slowly toward the counter, her eyes scanning every table. Eli froze, his hands damp from wiping down a tray. He hadn't seen her since Lena's voice cracked open their world. She met his eyes and gave the smallest nod. He walked to her, heart thudding like it forgot how to behave. "You shouldn't be here alone," he said softly. She smirked, tired. "I'm not. There's a driver outside. What are you doing here?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached into her lap and pulled out something wrapped in brown paper. He didn't have to ask. The violin. Still broken. Still beautiful. She placed it on the counter between them like an offering. Not a gift, a message. "I thought, if I came here," she whispered, "I'd remember who I am, before everyone started telling me what I couldn't do." Eli's eyes glistened. "You don't need me for that." "Yes, I do," she said, "because you taught me to fight for what matters." He stared at her, speechless. "I'm not asking you to come back," she added. "I'm asking you not to disappear. You taught me to fight for what matters." Eli stood at the gates of the mansion again, but this time, he didn't feel small. He wasn't dressed in his best. He wasn't holding an apology. He came with truth, and the weight of everything he had nearly lost. Daniel opened the door himself. He didn't look surprised, just tired. They stood there for a long second, two men bound by grief, standing on different sides of power. "You shouldn't have come," Daniel said. "I had to," Eli replied. Daniel stepped aside without a word. Eli entered. No pleasantries, no hallway tour. They met in the study, the same room where promises once sat folded in envelopes. This time no papers on the desk, just air and silence. "You think I abandoned her," Daniel said quietly. "I think you were scared she'd be abandoned again," Eli answered. Daniel nodded once. "I was. She asked me not to disappear," Eli continued, "and I almost did. For good." Daniel looked at him, arms crossed. "Guarded. You said I hurt her." "You did. But not because I meant to." "No," Daniel said. "You hurt her because you mattered. That's what made it dangerous." Eli stepped forward, voice steady. "Then let me say this. I never saw your daughter as a project or a paycheck. I saw a kid fighting to feel real again." Daniel didn't speak. Eli's voice dropped. "You saw my kindness as charity. I gave it as love." That word landed like a stone in still water. No echo. Just weight. Daniel looked down, and for the first time in weeks, he didn't have a response. "You saw my kindness as charity. I gave it as love." Eli didn't notice anything different that morning. He brewed coffee, burned the toast, walked Lena to school with her lunch in a brown bag and her hoodie zipped up to her chin. It wasn't until Rosa flagged him down at the diner that something felt off. "Someone's been looking for you," she said. He raised a brow. "Bill collectors?" "No, the internet." She handed him her phone. It was already playing. The video wasn't polished, a little shaky, recorded from the back row of the garden event weeks ago. The quality wasn't great, but the sound. It was his voice. Raw, honest, cracked in places, but real. He stood still behind the mic, singing Mel's lullaby, and in the background, the girl in her wheelchair smiling softly, eyes glistening. The caption read, "The waiter who healed a grieving child with a song." 12 million views, thousands of comments. Who is this man? The emotion in his voice wrecked me. This isn't performance. This is presence. Find him. Give him a record deal. Or a church. Or both. Eli stared at the screen like it was lying to him. Rosa smiled gently. "Someone sent this to my niece in Florida. She's in music school. Guess who her professor just invited?" He looked up. She handed him a business card. Handwritten on the back, "Auditions next week. Full scholarship possible. Just bring the voice." He stood there motionless. the clinking of the diner around him suddenly distant. For years, he'd been told his gift died with his wife. Now the world had heard it, and it wanted more. He's invited to audition at a local music academy. The knock came just after dusk. Eli opened the basement door, expecting a landlord or a neighbor. Not him. Daniel stood in the fading light, dressed simply. No suit, no briefcase, no sharp edges. Just a man with tired eyes and something clutched in his hand. The violin. Repaired, polished, whole. I had it fixed, he said quietly. Eli stepped back, unsure. Why? Daniel looked around the narrow entryway. Chipped paint, rusted railing, concrete steps stained from old rain. I needed to see where you live, he said. Because you saw where we lived, and you didn't flinch. Eli didn't reply. Daniel extended the case. She asked me to give this to you personally. Eli took it slowly, hands reverent. Why now? He asked. Daniel looked down, shuffled his words like they weighed more than they should. I was angry, protective, afraid. He looked up, eyes finally steady. But I was wrong. Eli raised a brow. I thought I was saving her by keeping her world small. But you didn't just help her walk again. You gave her music back. Laughter, voice. Eli opened the violin case. Inside a folded note. A drawing. Stick figures. Him, the girl, and Lena. All three holding hands beneath a crooked rainbow. Daniel swallowed hard. I can't undo what I said. But I can say this. Thank you. A pause. Then softer. Voice breaking just slightly. Thank you. For showing my daughter what love looks like. Eli closed the case gently. Not with triumph, but with grace. Thank you. For showing my daughter what love looks like. The park wasn't busy. Just a few kids on swings, an old man feeding pigeons, and a breeze that carried the smell of wet grass and afternoon sun. Lena sat on the edge of the sandbox, arms tucked into her hoodie sleeves. She wasn't playing. She was waiting. Eli stood off to the side, leaning against a tree. Beside him, the girl in the wheelchair. She was quiet, nervous, but brave in the way kids are when they want something to go right. Does she hate me? The girl asked, eyes forward. No, Eli said softly. She just forgot how to share. The girl nodded, then wheeled herself forward, slow and unsure. Lena looked up as she approached. Didn't smile. Didn't run. But she didn't walk away either. They sat in silence for a while. Then the girl spoke first. My name's Ava. Lena didn't answer. I'm not trying to steal him, Ava said. I just needed him, too. Lena looked down, fingers digging into the sand. My mom died, Ava added. That's why I couldn't walk for a while. I didn't know, Lena whispered. I didn't know he could leave, she added, voice trembling. He didn't, Ava replied. He just tried to carry too much. A long pause. Then Lena looked up. Did he sing to you too? Ava smiled. Yeah, but I think it was your mom's song. Lena blinked fast. I miss her. Me too, Ava whispered. And then something happened. Lena stood, brushed off her hands and reached into her backpack. She pulled out a music sheet, smudged, creased, loved. Do you know how to read this? She asked. Ava nodded slowly. Yeah, Lena smiled. Small. Real. Want to play it together? They asked to play a duet, for both their moms. The basement was warm for once. Lena had insisted on saving up from her lunch allowance to help cover the heater bill. She said it was an investment in mood. Eli came home to find her already inside, feet swinging off the mattress, something wrapped in brown paper sitting on his pillow. He raised an eyebrow. Early birthday? She shrugged. No, but you've been quiet since the violin came back, like you're afraid of it. He sat beside her slowly. His hands hovered over the package. Go on, she said. He peeled it open. Inside, the same violin, but different. The chin rest had been polished, the strings replaced, the bow re-haired. A soft cloth lined the case now, and on it sat a small paper tag in her handwriting. For you, not for anyone else. Eli didn't speak for a moment. His fingers traced the body of the instrument like it was an old friend returned after years lost at sea. How'd you— Mr. Dawson paid for the repairs, Lena cut in. But I picked the case. I made them wrap it, and I made them put your name on the receipt. He chuckled softly, but his eyes glistened. You always sing for other people, she said, voice quieter now. Ava, Mom, me. But you don't sing for you. Not really. He turned toward her. Why does that matter? Because if you don't let it live in you, she whispered, it dies, and you already lost too much. Eli looked down at the violin, then at her, then at the ceiling, cracked and uneven. But somehow it all felt whole. She scooted closer, rested her head on his arm. It's time you play for you, Dad. The recital hall wasn't huge, just 50 chairs, warm lighting, and a single black piano on the hardwood stage. But to Eli, it was everything. He stood backstage with the violin in hand, shoulders tense, breaths uneven. The suit coat felt too crisp, the lights too bright. Lena peeked around the curtain. You okay? He nodded, but said nothing. Ava sat in the front row beside Daniel. Both girls wore matching hairpins, tiny silver music notes. A silent pact. The crowd buzzed quietly. Students, parents, faculty, a few music scouts, no tray to carry, no apron to wear, no one waiting for a refill, just a man and his sound. Eli stepped onto the stage. For a moment, no one clapped. They didn't know him. But then Lena stood, and started. Ava followed. Daniel joined, and the room echoed with applause. He nodded once, placed the violin under his chin, closed his eyes, and began to play. No backing track, no sheet music, just memory and pain. And love. The melody didn't try to be perfect. It breathed. It wavered. It felt. Each note carried years. Of cracked walls. Of bedtime humming. Of quiet grief buried beneath service smiles. And when it ended, the room held its breath for a full second longer, like even time wanted it to last. Then came the applause. Thunderous. Honest. But Eli's eyes scanned the room for something else, and there, in the back corner, not far from the exit, a man sat quietly. Familiar stillness, same unreadable eyes, the same man from the diner, and this time he clapped first. The man in the corner claps first. The recital was over. The chairs folded. The stage lights dimmed. The violin packed away, not out of sight, but with care. Back in the basement, Eli sat on the edge of his mattress, hands still trembling. Not from nerves, but from release. Lena handed him an old coat. I figured you'd want this cleaned, he smiled. Didn't think I still owned it, she shrugged. It was hiding behind the heater. As he checked the pockets, something crinkled. Dry and soft, aged by time. Paper, folded, yellowed, unopened. Eli's fingers paused. His breath caught before he even looked at it. It was her handwriting. Mel. He unfolded the letter slowly, the edges fragile like dried leaves, and then he read, Eli, if you're reading this, I probably forgot where I left it. Or the universe decided you needed it more now than when I wrote it. His hand trembled. You don't believe in signs, but I do. And if I'm gone, I need you to hear this. Really hear it. Her voice filled the room. Not aloud, but in him. I see the way you hide your heart in service. The way you pour yourself out for others but save none for yourself. A tear slipped down his cheek. But Eli, your music was never mine. I just held it long enough to remind you it existed. He folded over in grief, not broken but softened. Then came the last line. One day someone will see the music in you. When they do, don't run, play. He pressed the letter to his chest, breathing in its weight, its voice, and for the first time in years, he let her go. One day, someone will see the music in you. The community music school wasn't fancy, No marble floors, no chandeliers, just scuffed tile, a crooked front desk, and a faded bulletin board with piano lesson flyers thumbtacked in uneven rows. Eli stood in the hallway holding a clipboard. Name, contact info, area of focus. He stared at the empty form. The receptionist smiled gently from across the counter. You can just write vocals or performance. Doesn't have to be complicated. He nodded, then slowly bent over the page. But instead of writing what he does, he wrote his name, just that, Eli Matthews. Because for the first time, that name felt like enough. He turned in the clipboard, thanked the woman, and walked out into the late morning sun. Outside, Lena waited on the bench, swinging her feet. A small cloth bag in her lap. What's that? He asked. She opened it carefully. His apron, cleaned, folded, pressed. I figured you'd want to keep it, she said. You know, for when people ask where you started. He chuckled softly, sat beside her and held the fabric in his lap. His fingers traced the worn edges, the faint ketchup stain, the frayed loop. It used to be armor. It used to be identity. Now, it was a reminder. He reached into his violin case, the one Ava had insisted he carry everywhere now, and gently tucked the apron inside, under the velvet flap. Not as a tool, as a memory, as proof, because he wasn't just a waiter, he was a father, a singer, a soul who healed, and was healed. He closed the case, stood up, and walked into the rest of his life. His old apron is folded and placed in a case. The diner hadn't changed, same faded booths, same chipped tile, same hum of neon from the window, buzzing faintly like a lullaby for the tired. Eli stepped through the door with Lena on one side and Ava on the other, both girls smiling, both in matching hoodies. The hostess looked up, blinked once, then smiled wide. Well, look who it is. Back for the soup? Eli grinned. Thought we'd give it one more try. They slid into the same booth near the window. Table 12, where a crying mother once sat, where a small act of kindness began a story no one saw coming. Ava pressed her hands to the table. It feels smaller now. Means you've grown, Eli said. Lena picked up a crayon from the holder and drew a heart on the napkin. When the waiter came, young, nervous, maybe his first week, he fumbled the order pad, dropped a fork, and apologized twice for the wait. Eli didn't mind. He understood. They ordered fries, milkshakes, a plate of pancakes, crispy on the edges. When the meal ended, Eli reached for the bill, but it wasn't there. The waiter had already taken it, and in its place, a folded napkin. He opened it. Inside, thanks for inspiring my big sister. She told me about you. J.M., new hire. Eli looked over at the counter where the young man gave a shy smile and a salute. Lena leaned in, whispering, Full circle. Eli nodded slowly. Yeah, but now we're the reason someone else gets to start. And in that quiet moment, same booth, same glow, same hum. He didn't feel invisible anymore. He felt part of the place. A new waiter smiles and slides their bill away. The diner had mostly emptied. The buzz of voices dimmed into soft clinks of silverware and refills being poured at distant tables. Ava leaned her head on Eli's shoulder. Lena reached for a crayon, again, blue this time, and scribbled something quietly on the back of her placemat. What are you drawing? Eli asked. She folded it, slipped it between the napkin holder and ketchup bottle. Nothing. Just something for someone. He didn't press. They stepped outside into the warm dusk. The wind carried music from a car passing by. Faint, soft, familiar. Eli looked up at the sky, stars peeking through. It didn't feel heavy anymore. Inside, a new customer slid into the booth they'd just left. She looked tired, worn, carrying more than her purse. As she reached for a napkin, her fingers brushed the folded placemat Lena had left behind. She opened it, in blue crayon. If someone helped you today, it's your turn now. Kindness doesn't end. It gets passed on. Oh, the woman smiled, tears welling. She pressed the napkin to her chest. At the counter, the young waiter noticed. He didn't say a word. He just nodded. Outside, Eli and the girls walked down the street, toward a night that wasn't scary anymore, a future that felt like a song, and behind them, a napkin rested on a table, a note, a new beginning, a new story, just waiting to be told.